Good evening and welcome to the planning board meeting of Tuesday, January 16th. These meetings are recorded, excuse me. I'll take a motion on the minutes from Lena, seconded by John. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4, correct. We have an 81P for 36 Howard Street. Is that you, sir?
That is. Have some reduced size copies that they find convenient.
I'll remember.
Paperwork?
I don't know.
Thanks.
Me.
You have the application, sir?
In the check?
Leave it. Why am I brought that application in?
Pardon?
Did our client drop that off?
We don't have an application, sir.
Form A.
Let me look and see if I have it.
In the interim, sir, you can go ahead and tell us what you're looking to do.
Okay, my name is Byron Andrews. I'm with Andrews Survey and Engineering, Uxbridge, Massachusetts.
Brian?
Byron, B-Y-R.
Thank you, sir.
Our client, David and Elaine Phillips, own some property on Howard Street. They have enough frontage to divide it into 2 lots. However, they have insufficient area. We went to the zoning board and
And you were granted the relief.
we were
Yep.
granted the relief.
So basically, this is endorsable as submitted, based on the zoning relief that was received by the ZBA. Is that basically the long and the short of it, sir?
Yes, it is.
Obviously, it's endorsable as submitted, it doesn't much matter.
All right.
The only problem, sir, is I'm gonna need that application in the check. We can certainly vote on it, but in terms of Larry signing it and so on and so forth, that obviously can't happen until the application is produced. With that, I'll take a motion from the board.
Got the Mylar?
Yeah, it's right here.
But it's
It
just got the
doesn't matter.
Mylar.
I know, but
It is what it is.
it had the lot area for 1 lot in the zone. I mean, it's like, yeah, we have lot frontage for 2, so that means we have 2.
Sure.
Why not? Why do we have zoning? I have no clue.
Like I said,
Well, normally the abrupt.
Right.
I'll take a motion. Motion by
Motion
Joe,
to-
seconded by John. Any further discussion on the motion? Here or not? All in favor, opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, sir. We're gonna move along.
Okay, thank you.
We have a continued public hearing for the application of F&D Central Realty Corp. for the special permit to construct Bear Hill Village Planned Residential Development, as well as we have the continued public hearing on the application of F&D Realty, Central Realty Corp., excuse me, for approval of Bear Hill Village definitive plan. I don't know if everyone has had the opportunity, excuse me, but I believe Larry had sent out an email with the overview copy that was requested at
Yep.
last meeting, which
I saw it.
Bob is giving you the hard copy for,
I know it.
showing the scope of work and so on and so forth. Do have a quick question for you, Bob. And not that I had the opportunity to drive by today, but when was this overhead taken, do you know? Was it recent?
2015 GIS.
This was the Mass Ortho flyover.
That's fine. The only other thing I'd like you to consider to add to the scope is determine on when you're done, is if in fact the parking lot needed to be restriped. That would be the only other question I had for you. I know the picture shows that it's pretty visible. And it very well may be still in that type of condition, but again, based on the work that you're doing, the restriping doesn't seem to be something that's going to break the bank by any means. Thanks, Bob, you're the best. I'll take your silence as an approval.
Acquiescence.
So, at the last meeting, we had the 3 issues that were outstanding that we wanted to be addressed. The first one we talked about was eliminating the two smaller areas of common open space that seem to be isolated from the other areas of common open space, one being here and another one being here. So now we have just three large contiguous parcels of open space parcel 1, open space parcel 2, open space parcel 3 along Beaver Street. So the plans have been modified to, the common open space plan has been modified to reflect that. Secondly, we had discussed making this intersection a four-way stop. So we have now added, there is an existing stop sign here at Maple Street coming this way. We have now added a stop sign in this direction here, stop sign coming down Casey here, and a stop sign coming down Beaver Street here. So now we have a four-way stop intersection. And as was shown on the plan last time, was we've added the bus stops in 3 locations, one here to pretty much get this portion of the development, one here to service this portion of the development, and another one here along Beaver Street that will take care of this remaining portion of the development if need be. Then the final aspect was to provide this plan here that shows the overview of the park and the 2 fields that the applicant is proposing to make renovations to satisfy the density bonus improvements. So what we've done is we brought this over head picture in, transformed it into a plan.
Bob, just hold your thought. Rosenfeld Park.
Is that Rosenfeld Park? I
Roosevelt
thought
Park
it
on
was.
Cedar Street, yes, yeah.
Thanks, Bob, sorry about that.
So what we have is we have the 2 ball fields. So what the applicant is agreed to do is replace the fence around both ball fields, which would be fence here and this fence here. Place the fence around the existing batting cages, which is these 2 batting cages that are located right in here. Demolish and rebuild 4 dugouts in the same location that they're in. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Replace and upgrade the lighting in 9 locations. You can see there's existing light poles here, 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 and here.
So
And
they're
then,
actually adding a light in the new,
yeah.
yeah.
And then rebuild front stairs of the existing clubhouse. I believe that's in this location over here, there's an existing clubhouse and some necessary rebuilding of some pressure treated decking and some stairs.
You may want to label that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure which one it was, but.
Yeah, I'm not either. I think that's it.
Yeah. So, which would make it this building here.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, that is what we've done since the last meeting. I think that we are pretty much at a point where we've resolved the outstanding issues that have come up, either by notice or by comments at the hearings. And we're just waiting for the decision to be finalized and so that it can be voted on and the hearing closed.
Thank you, Bob. To that point, have you received any correspondence back from the highway surveyor in terms of coordinated the effort of the road improvements? And this is more to Larry.
Well, we met, we didn't correspond. He came in and
Oh,
we went
okay.
over it in my office. The consensus was to make sure, obviously, that the coordination works, but also to make sure that the language of the decision isn't outlandish and unrealistic, and it needs to correlate with reality. So,
No, I gather that.
what
That's why I'm
Scotty,
trying to figure
well,
out.
what Scott was looking at was, he'd prefer to do Beaver Street all at once. He'll come back in and do the final coat on Beaver Street once Dominic's done. But if it were to have to be phased for whatever reason, he would prefer the north segment be done first, and that language has been added to one of the drafts of the decision. So if the language will require the whole thing to be done, But if it's done in phases, the north segment from Central to Maple will be done first.
Let me just stop you for a second, Larry. I agree with him that I think overlaying the top coat would be beneficial to the town, to do it at one than to keep seaming it up, to be frank with you. Now, with that said, that kind of puts it back to what Dominic's,
Well, no, if you look at the latest plans that we submitted for the street improvement of Beaver Street, there's a note on there saying that we agreed when we met here at the town hall, Dominic and Mike and Larry and Scott, that the agreement was that we, in the areas where we were gonna make the changes, those areas, there would be clean saw cut lines made, and either the pavement would be, areas where it was gonna be removed, would be removed, and, in that area address, and then where it was gonna be widened, it would be widened
with binder.
with binder to that point.
No, I understand
And
what
then,
you're
and then
doing,
the
but-
town would come in, and they were gonna, because it's already on their plans to repave it, so then they would
The
repave it.
question that I have, though, and I understand the logistics of what you just said, I think my question is more in tune with the timing on when Dominic felt that he was going to be doing the road improvements specifically to Beaver Street. And I say this because I know at the last meeting, one of the residents
Yeah.
had brought up that question, so that's kind of,
I'm pretty sure that based on that meeting that we had, Dominic, his plan is to do it in conjunction with Scott requiring him what to do, as far as the actual, as far as what the part that he needs to do, I think he needs to do it,
I think what we're
yeah,
kind of asking,
I understand what you're
Bob,
saying.
can we conclude that the town of Milford, in theory, sitting here today, in theory, could top coat the entire Beaver Street like they want to by August of 18? That's kind of what I'm getting to.
Well, I think when we met with Scott, I think he said he might have been 2 years away.
Again, these are things, this is what I'm trying to
Right,
try
so
to
I think
figure out,
I think you're looking at
I
more
don't know
like
when he-
2020.
Is that when he's scheduled to do
I'm
that?
pretty
See,
sure
this
he
is
said
what
he
we
was
don't
2
know.
years away.
Okay, this is what we don't know, so.
Well, but to the extent that I need to figure out how to write a decision, I was tying it more to the requirements necessary to get his density bonus. So whatever the unit count was, I
The only-
just,
and I hear what you're saying, Larry, but I just want to, I think I personally would like to see that the road be widened before these units get erected and sold, because I think the benefit is that the road should be
Yeah.
in a situation that could, in theory, take the added car traffic that it, in theory, will generate. That's, even when you put the road through, it's gonna generate a certain degree of traffic, so.
I don't see it as being once he gets the main road in, I don't see it as being a huge haul for him to do the improvements on Beaver Street after that, and he can do his own internal work however he wants.
I'm not concerned about his internal work as much as I'm.
No, I'm not concerned about that at all. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying I'm not saying it's gotta be the first thing he does before he does anything. What I'm saying is when he puts in the roadway extension and ties it in, while he's doing that, after he's done with that, he could go in and do his improvements on Beaver Street and
But now, in terms of timing for the town of Milford to come back and overlay it, I don't know,
well, that's where Scott
Well,
was.
living it open-ended.
he's living, if you taper that there, you're driving on a binder. It's not like you're not driving on anything.
Right.
You can drive on the
I
binder.
can drive on a binder, but I wouldn't drive on a binder for a year and a half and then go back and try to top it and think that the binder's gonna still be there in a year and a half.
Well, that's why, aside from trying to coordinate it with Scotty, I wanted to tie it to either releasing units for COs or getting building permits for any of the bonus units. So anything after 98,
Well,
because on other developments similar to this, we tied it to, the 99th building permit cannot be issued until. But I think he's gonna be way ahead of it by that time anyway, but just as a fail-safe, your decision needs to account for that.
Well, we need to find out when Scott's gonna
Potential.
be out there.
Well, he's not necessarily in a hurry, that's what I was trying to get at before, is that he can do it, at least from what he knows now, is my understanding, he'd be able to do it at any time. You know, so if Dominic had it all done this year and he had time to do it, he'd be able to do it. Or he'd do it first thing.
Well, if that's the
in
case,
19.
if that's the case, what I'm saying is that when he does the road, his road, the next thing I wanna see is Beaver Street, and I don't care about any of the units.
That's what I'm saying.
And then be done with it.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
And we don't have to worry about it. But if Scott's not gonna be ready for 2 years after that,
Then you can't hold him
then that's a
captive.
different story.
That schedule was based on if Scott were left to his own devices, having to do all of the work, having to widen it, having to do this, having to do that, that's when he would have scheduled it. But if he's not gonna have to do all of that, there's gonna be a whole bunch of work done, all the hard stuff's gonna be done, and he'll be able to come in and do the top coat, do the final coat, all at once, and that'd be fine. But, back to what I said a minute ago, should for some reason something interrupt Dominic getting all of the widening done for the whole stretch, we definitely need to get the north piece done first, if that's the eventuality. I'm not encouraging that, neither is Scott, and I don't think Dominic would be either, but we don't want to have the decision be so good and so tight and so inflexible that it's not realistic. That's why I was shooting for going at it the way we've been talking. We could tighten it up in terms of a cutoff date for when the initial widening of Beaver Street needs to be done. And that's, we just do it with a date.
I just don't think the town benefits from having multiple patches and starts and stops in the road. I think it's better off to do the entire segment at once. That's my preference, and I don't,
All right,
again, ultimately, the town will own the road. It just doesn't make sense to start segmenting that road.
Is Dominic gonna start cutting in the road if this is approved immediately? Is he planning on going to work?
Casey Drive extension?
Yeah.
Yes.
So then, end of August, end of September, he's all done with doing the Beaver Street work and just put it in that way and be done with it. And that way, we don't have to worry about what he's building or what he isn't. It's not a huge haul if he's got that equipment out there.
Well, not only that, Joe, but you would think.
I mean,
in
you make it
theory,
part of phase one, because phase
If you
one
think
is,
in theory that Casey Drive has to.
you make it
he's gotta
part of
put a
phase
binder
one.
down.
well,
Doing
we
the
can
road
say
improvements,
that.
putting a binder
Is
down,
that
why is he
gonna
gonna
keep
hire?
Well, here again, I would
Binder, it just
have a
doesn't make.
conversation
Well,
with
he
Scott
could wait and do
first
his
to make
internal
sure.
roads, but I'm saying, no, he can't do that, is what I'm saying.
No.
I'm forcing him to do that,
Yeah.
so, but I don't think that's the end of the world. I don't think that it's that unreasonable.
I
to
don't think
do
we're
that.
being inflexible, Larry, either. I just think it's practical.
Well, that way Scott can plan it, you know,
Yeah.
that way he knows it's on this date,
gotta
unless
put it on his
something
budget,
happens, he can
yeah.
put it, and he can, and that way it gives him as much flexibility as possible.
There you go. And add striping, please.
So if you require the widening done by the end of the construction of this calendar year's construction season,
No, before then.
so you want
End of
Scott,
August or end of September at the latest. You gotta give Scott at least a month to put down the top coat
okay,
in the construction season.
Yeah.
So if we turn it over to him at the end of September, he has all of October, which is pretty reasonable to do the top coat.
Yes.
Not gonna like that. He's not gonna like that.
Joe, he'd be all right.
Huh?
Why?
That work?
I agree.
You can make it work.
He's gonna be thrilled that it's, to get this thing done with, you know.
What?
He's gonna be thrilled to start building, so, I mean, he
Okay.
can make that work, yes. I'm sure he can make that work.
We need a
That gives you
vote.
enough information to be able to draft the decision, Larry?
We'll just go into the decision.
yep, the other thing would be, what cutoff date do you want to have for the Rosenfeld Park? That's less of a pressing issue in terms of when it gets constructed.
Maybe that one you
Plus-
should link to the bonus units.
That one definitely should go to the bonus.
Maybe that one you link to the bonus units.
That one unequivocally should go to the bonus.
So
And
prior.
that one's gonna be.
Prior to the issuance of any building
Building
permits for the
permits.
bonus units, the work at Roosevelt Park has to be completed.
Yeah.
That works.
Because obviously, that's kind of, I don't even know when he's gonna do that. I don't know what their calendars are
Yeah, he's
in
gonna have to
terms
work
of.
around when they
Right,
do
that's what I'm
too.
saying, so I have,
Right.
that one's gonna be more of a coordinated effort on his part, so it should be linked to the bonus.
Yeah, but
Yeah, if it gets
98th, the
close,
98th or the 99th unit, by the time he gets there, he should be
Yeah, he should
able
have
to
a-
have
Right.
figured that all out.
What are we doing, another extension?
Well, yeah, I would prefer that you keep the hearings open
Yeah, he- I
until
prefer
at
to
least
get this
next
finally out.
meeting.
Yeah, you can close it and take it under advisement, right? You don't have to vote on it tonight.
Well, and depending on what we
You don't need
discover,
an
whether you
extension.
need to submit anything or not, I'd prefer to keep it open, and
Yeah. Well, I
you're
brought
not
those
gaining
just in
anything.
case. That's a discussion we had, that he wanted to keep it
Yeah.
open, so.
You're not gaining anything closing it. In fact, you could be losing.
No,
it
but there
simply.
is there is a sense that this definitely needs to be closed at some point.
Well, yeah, at whatever it was,
All right.
February.
There's nothing else in terms of the decision that has to be discussed. So in theory, the next meeting
Yes.
should be closed.
Yeah,
I'm
agree.
just making
I-
sure.
Absolutely.
That makes sense, really.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Yes, Larry?
yep.
So, with that, is there anyone here of the audience for the planned residential, Bear Hill Village?
Want them all down.
No, don't be fresh. No, okay. With that, I have a request for grant of extension from the applicant to our next meeting of February 6th. This is for both the planned residential development and the definitive subdivision. I'll take motion from Joe, seconded by John. Any further discussion in the extension? Hearing not, all in favor, opposed, unanimous. Thank you.
The open space parcels that are shown on this won't be on the definitive plan. They'll be done by 81P
Yes.
after
Even the secretary?
No,
that.
let's continue.
Okay.
Okay.
Karen,
All right.
if you could read the application for the 705? What's that?
Hey, you're up.
It's a new one.
That's the new one. You don't have it? You don't have the legal
I just
description?
have the little.
Here's one of
Is that what
these.
you normally read?
That's all I have.
Larry might
There
have
it is.
something for you.
The application of Lily Bing LLC for approval of Ariana Estates definitive plan, a 5-lot residential subdivision located on 1.93 acre parcel off Fruit Street. Assessors map 52, block 0, lots 293 and 294, RA zone. The full application and/or maps of the above items are available for public inspection Monday through Friday from 8 AM to 4 PM at the Office of Planning and Engineering, Town Hall, 52 Main Street, Milford, Mass. Interested parties may express their views at the above scheduled hearings.
Thank you. The applicant is proposing a 5-lot residential subdivision, including one new street. The property consists of approximately 1.9 acres located at 11 and 13 Fruit Street. The proposed plan appears to be substantially in conformance with the preliminary plan that was approved by the planning board for the development on 9/5/17. The proposed subdivision includes property from both number 11 and 13 Fruit Street. The owners of 11 Fruit Street have signed the requisition Form H. Requisite, sorry. Proposed Lot 5 represents the reconfigured parcel for the existing single-family home at 11 Fruit Street. Proposed Lot 2 being 117 square feet. It's a 2-family lot, while lots 1, 3, and 4 are between 12 and 16,000 square feet and will each require a special permit from the ZBA if they are to be developed with 2-family dwellings. Also, the Godfrey Brook Flood Mitigation Project permanent easement appears to be accurately depicted on the plan. Larry has reviewed the definitive plan dated 12/5/17 and find it to be in compliance with the Milford subdivision rules and regulations. Mike, I'll skip over you. Come back to you. The highway surveyor has approved the request, and states, I think he meant, they met all my requirements for the previous site plan review. From the fire department, they also have no comments. The water company has their typical requirements
I sent them a check
in terms of the depth
a month ago.
and the sand and gravel required, and the ductile iron class. And with that,
Really?
it's all yours.
I should check my,
Oh, excuse me, no, my apologies. Let me go back to Mike.
shows all two family.
Mike, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I noted that you had 9 comments. I don't know if they've been addressed or if they need to be addressed, but feel free
Well,
to.
I don't know if they've been addressed on these plans here. George and I haven't gotten together to discuss this letter. I can go through them quickly unless have you.
No, I want to go through them then, and then obviously it will give him a talking point.
Okay, so my letter references the materials that were submitted, which were the set of plans, 7 sheets for Ariana Estates and the stormwater report and drainage calculations. Let's see, the first comment in my letter just references Lot 1. It's about 15 square feet shy of the 16,000 required for a 2-family house. So it's just a suggestion that they may want to bump that up to 16,000 square feet, so they do not have to go through the special permit process. Comment number 2, just lets everyone know once again that the lots that are less than 16,000 square feet, that are depicted as 2 families in the plans that are submitted, or on the plans that were submitted, need to go through a special permit process to allow the 2-family on that lot. Let's see, in terms of the design of the underground detention basin, item number 3 just references that I did not find any soil testing that was performed within the basin, which is required. Also, just making the planning board aware that this is a underground detention basin versus the regular open surface detention basins that we typically see in subdivisions. That's not to say there's anything prohibiting it as well. Since it is underground, I would suggest that the plans depict some more inspection ports, and maybe build those inspection ports up to look more like drain manholes, so when they're in front, when it's in front of the house in the lawn area, people are aware that there's something under the ground.
Good point.
In terms of the resource areas that were flagged, I'm suggesting that another flag, or a couple, whatever that comes out, some additional flags be hung along the brook towards the southern direction, south of flag number A9. And then, as these wetlands or these flags were located, I don't see specific spot shot elevations shown on the plan, so I'm requesting that, and that ties into the 100-year flood elevations. So that would be a little more, well, it will be beneficial to really understand and delineate that 100-year floodplain. The plan does show the 100-year floodplain. This will just confirm things, and then it's also requesting that the 100-year floodplain itself be shown a little more clearly and connect the 100-year elevations, because it's not just one elevation, it changes as the Godfrey Brook slopes downward. And that this subdivision will require a filing with the notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. And in there, I'm making sure that I'm requesting or stating that a resource area description should be submitted. And more specifically, I want to make sure that there's no water and vegetated wetlands in the lower 270 contour area in the southern portion of the site. As we know, this subdivision is associated with the underground culvert for the storm mitigation project that the town constructed, and there's a lot of discussions as to how the utilities at the end of the cul-de-sac are going to connect up to the proposed buildings. So the term sleeves or things of that nature were discussed in the preliminary. The detail sheet does show sleeves. I'm just requesting in item 6 that the sleeves be shown a little more prominent in the profile sheet. And at the end of the cul-de-sac, in my opinion, all the utilities were just too congested. I didn't even take a shot at realigning them or laying them out on my own. They're just too congested. I think they need to be reevaluated. These are the force mains, the water lines, the hydrants, things of that nature. Force main, I already said the force mains and the water services. So, in my opinion, they need to be reevaluated, just in terms of layout. And then once that's done, we can get together and discuss it a little further. And with those utilities crossing over other lots, or cross over multiple lots, easements need to be added to the plans that I reviewed for those services, as well as the drainage in the detention basins need drainage areas around, drainage easements around them. Standard typical cross-section of a roadway on the street layout needs to be added to the detail sheets. And once again, during the preliminary plan hearings, it was discussed that the properties associated with the underground culvert, with the town's underground culvert, and having the deeds written to protect the town in the future. A lot of the discussions were about future maintenance of the driveways, utilities, things of that nature. That's about it.
Thanks, Mike.
Good job.
Okay, sir, all yours.
For the record, George Michov, Guerrier and Haunen, and I'm here to present Ariana Estates, approximately 2-acre subdivision with 5 dwellings, all of them 2-family houses. Currently on site we have 2 houses, one of them would be relocated, and one of them will remain as is. 3 new houses will be built. As I said, all of them are 2-family units. Associated with those, 205-foot long cul-de-sac will be built. And it will have granite curbing and a sidewalk along the western side of it. Also, this road will serve the 3 new houses and the relocated house. As I said, the existing house will remain pretty much served by as is. It will not use any of the new utilities. My client will do an improvement of the water system. Will bring 8-inch main through the road, and it will if you look at the second page of your handout, you can see the sewer and the water more prominently shown. There are 2 hydrants proposed, one in the beginning of the subdivision and one at the end of it. The drainage would be handled by water will flow, sheet flow down, then it will go into 2 catch basins, manhole system, and it will go in an underground detention system. Sewer at the site, we have one approximately here. You can see it on your handout. I have it on some of the other sheets if you want me to show it.
Well, sir, there's other people in the audience, so you also have to speak in terms of what they understand, so I know you keep referring to what we can see, but if you just continue down showing it on the plan so that those in the audience can better understand what you're trying to do, please.
Okay.
Yep.
This house will have gravity, the sewer will go by gravity to a manhole, and then by gravity to the street, and then those units will have to pump to the manhole, and then again the sewer will go by gravity.
Private pump.
Yes, correct.
Which 2?
2 in the back.
Yeah.
terms of Mike's concerns, have any of those been addressed, or can you address the concerns that he brought up?
I did not have the time to go over all of them, but in terms of his suggestion about increasing lot 1 to 16,000 square feet, we'll definitely do it. I just didn't have the time to.
I'm not sure the board wants it to be increased.
Where are you?
Barrett.
Sir,
Sorry.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Uh,
No, just, let me just help you out for a second. What we need to do is we need to go through his
Okay.
pitch, if you will, and then we will open it up for comments.
Okay.
That it's being a public meeting, but we all are trying to understand exactly what he's presenting.
Okay.
Obviously, you may have questions at the end, and at that point, certainly, we'll try to address them for you, but in the interim, if we could just allow him I'm just,
Okay.
everything's fair in love and war, right?
Just in fairness to the applicant, I'm not sure the planning board would want to help the developer avoid going to the ZBA for a special permit for a two-family. That's just.
I just, again,
That's up to him.
Just to point out, there's no opportunity to actually increase the size of all the lots. There's only, also on your question, there's only a chance to tweak one of the lines in order to
I understand.
bring one of the lots to 16,000 square feet. The rest of them will still have to go in front of.
and I understand
ZBA.
what you're doing, and I just want you to, I think, be somewhat clear. Although your plan is showing for two duplexes, other than if the first one was to be increased to 16, and if in fact the first one had the proper frontage to make it legally, then that's fine. In terms of the other three, how I'm looking at this is just nothing more than single-family homes, because that's really what they are. Because you can, as far as I'm concerned, I'm only looking at lots that are supportive of single-family homes, because I don't honestly know if you're gonna be successful at the zoning board or not. I can't speak to that. So, I just wanna be kinda clear that
Yep.
you're stating duplexes, but in my mind, I'm looking at single-family homes, because that's what you have legal frontage for. You don't have legal frontage for anything other than the single-family homes. Unless, obviously, you increase the lot one.
Yep.
So. But, go ahead.
Okay. On your question about the soil testing, I did schedule it for early next week, weather permitting. Same would go for flagging, wetland flagging. I have it scheduled for early next week. Some of the comments are about topography or showing the 100-year floodplain. When I have the crew there to pick up the flags, I will also ask them to do some additional topo along the brook, so we have a better understanding. And
Okay.
that's,
Anything else? Nothing? Okay.
if there's questions.
No, well, I'll handle those, thank you. Before I open it up, I do want to show that a letter was received by a resident of the neighborhood, Joanne Marcotte, who resides at 8 Carvin Road for, as she writes, 38 years. Her land is directly behind the planned subdivision. Needless to say, I'm just gonna read excerpts of what she wrote. Needless to say, she's not in favor of the development of the property. The south side of the property rests on the Godfrey Brook, which makes the lower portion of the property in a flood zone. I fought for many years for flood control of this brook, and the town finally constructed a culvert to help divert some of the water that once flooded this property and surrounding properties. The thought of heavy equipment digging in and around the structure concerns me. From what I can see, the foundations of Lot 4 will be within a few feet of the culvert. She also claims the installation of utility lines, water, sewer, gas, etc., would be between the top of the culvert and the newly constructed roadway and driveways. This would interfere with the access of the culvert when necessary. Accessibility is crucial to maintaining the newly installed flood control culvert. She does quote a few a few things that have to do with the wetlands and the Conservation Committee. She also shares the amendment that was passed, that I already referenced. The lot size of the RA two-family dwellings from 8,000 square feet to 16,000 square feet, the width from 80 to 140, the frontage from 80 to 120, which was adopted, again, October 18th, 2004, and was approved by the Attorney General January 7th, 2005. Another concern is traffic on Fruit Street, which she claims there would be a minimum of 16 additional vehicles housed at the very congested cul-de-sac, which she refers to as a glorified driveway. Obviously, in summation of what her letter represents, she finds, she would hope that we would reconsider and disapprove this development. So again, I didn't read the exact letter, but I think I captured enough of her feelings. So again, I just wanted to at least put that in.
Not all of the references are accurate, however.
I just read some.
Yes, no, I know.
Some excerpts that accurately depicted her concerns, that's all. With that, and this is being a town meeting, a public meeting, you want me to open it up, or would you, do you have any?
There's a couple I had.
I'd like to hear what they.
I guess one of the things, Larry, there's a dynamic going on that, and Pat somewhat referenced it, but the fact that if the zoning board doesn't approve duplex lots, it changes the dynamic of what we're approving and what we're looking at significantly. So I'm sort of, depending on how we do this, I mean, it would look different if these things were single-family lots, I believe, and I don't know that we'd be in the same situation per se. And the whole thing might look somewhat different, and I hate to approve a plan, they turn it down, and we've got something that doesn't work or not. Does this have to be approved before they can go to zoning board to ask for duplex lots?
Yeah, you need to know
Need
what
something,
it is.
that's the problem. But again, I'm looking at this as only a single family. That's what
But
these
it
are.
would-
Yeah, but I
they
know,
want-
but the plans look at duplex, and we have double utilities that may change if they were only single family, that we would wanna, we're gonna approve it, and then all of a sudden, if they wanted to develop them as single family, I don't know that I'd want
Well, I
to
think-
approve this plan, per
I
se,
think
is
he's
what I'm
approaching
saying, I
this the
guess.
wrong way. I think what I'm getting to
Go for what's in.
is that this plan that he's presented can't be approved by us because it's not following what the existing bylaws represent. So my point to this is he needs to change this to show single families, because that's all you can approve. I'm not approving duplexes that aren't allowed.
Right.
It's
Well-
that simple.
But to
Because
the,
I can't speak to what the zoning board's gonna do.
right, but to the point that the subdivision doesn't approve the
It approves
units.
lots.
It approves lots. And I agree with Joe that a single-family subdivision would look a heck of a lot better than this in
Right.
terms of the lot line configuration. But you're still only gonna get so many lots out of it. So to the point of what you could actually build there, it's questionable that they'd get another unit out of it
No,
being
I-
a
yeah,
single family, but,
I think
if
you're
I
gonna
were.
get-
I don't think you're gonna get that, I just think it would look different if they, and I guess maybe that's the case,
It'd look better.
I understand what Pat's saying, maybe, based on what it is now, we look at the lots, we should only be looking at utilities servicing one
Precisely.
location, and then, when they go to zoning board, they need to come back
have to
to
come back,
us
yes.
Right.
and show us what that change is for two.
That's what I'm saying.
I agree.
But from the standpoint of the subdivision control law, the subdivision control law, puts you in a bind because you can't really do anything other than speculate on whether or not a two-family might get a special permit on some of the lots. On some of the lots, if they're large enough, they can be two-family. On whatever's left between the single-family and the two-family, whether it's 2 or 3 lots, then those are the ones that are up in the air. But
Yeah, I wouldn't have this issue other than utility servicing them becomes, I can approve it as a single family lot, but the utility servicing and how they're serviced because of the culvert and stuff becomes somewhat significant in terms of, how we do that and having to put the, the sleeves in and things like that. And it just, you know, we're gonna approve something that shows 2 sleeves and they only end up with 1. I guess we could take it out and change it later on if they only get 1 and they wanna go ahead.
Well, the detail that I remember seeing was that there was 1 sleeve in a certain area with all the utilities in it. So there would be 1 sleeve with all the water in it, and there was 1 sleeve for a particular crossing that had all the sewer force mains in it.
Is that what the sewer department wanted? I forget what, there was some, that was what they wanted to do, was group them?
Yeah,
Same thing with the water line?
right, that way there's one
more than
significant
sleeve?
element
Didn't you
defined,
suggest
and
more
it
than 1
protects everything.
You're fine with your utilities,
talking
because
about?
they all come in their own sleeve.
Yeah,
Then they tee off,
right,
become
right.
private with the pumps and so on and so forth.
Sleeve. Oh,
Again,
okay.
to my way of
Okay.
thinking, I'm only looking at single families.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're not, yeah, we can't look at any of it past that. I mean, it's a lot, that's all we can look at.
But to the extent that, you know, if there's a sleeve of 1 size to get 4 mains in it.
I get that.
Or 4 water lines in it, and there end up only being 2 or 3 lines in it, the fact that it's then oversized shouldn't be problematic, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, well, I guess we don't really have much choice. I mean, he can go ahead, the lots are legal, so, which is all. we're
As
really-
lots.
Yes.
So the lots are legal as the 16,000 square feet lots, is that what you're saying?
No, they're all
No,
legal.
no.
They're all legal,
Of whatever size they are.
okay.
They meet the
They meet
requirements
the
of our.
requirements
That's what I wanna
as
know.
subdividable, I'm gonna make this simple, subdividable, single-family house.
That's right, okay, I just wanted to
Possibly
hear
lot
that
1,
clearly.
possibly lot 1
Yes,
could comply if it was up to 16,000. Was it lot 2?
Lot 2 has 18,000.
okay,
Okay,
One
so,
it is.
one that has it, so that one
I get,
theoretically is okay.
right, I get that.
And then there's
All right.
another lot, Mike? Or is it just,
Close.
If they tweak lot 1 by 15 square feet, they could have 2 lots that meet the 16,000 square feet.
okay, does that make sense to you now?
It's lot one
I,
and two.
it doesn't, I just wanted to have it, clear it, I am clear now, okay.
So essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at creation of a subdivision that has 5 lots.
I know,
1 existing, 4 newly created.
and
They'll have to go to ZBA for a minimum of at least 2 lots.
Depending,
To
well,
get
right now,
duplex
they'd
if
have
they
to go
want
for
to.
3, but
Right now it's
potentially
3,
2.
Yeah.
you're right,
So
At least 2,
we're all in
no
agreement
matter
of
what.
what we're talking about and what we're looking at?
I do agree, yeah,
Okay.
I do.
Do you have any?
The only other thing, and they're not here, and we can probably get into this, because obviously this isn't gonna end tonight.
No.
Is just, I noticed Mike said that there wasn't some details in there, and just, take a look at what those details are. The sleeve pipe, we should make sure that that's sealed off at both ends, so that we don't get anything coming through there, so we wanna try to put some sort of, there's different materials out there that once they get the pipes in, they can seal around that or whatever, but we wanna make sure that's stabilized, so that we don't get, fall-ins, and then, just the other standard details, just making sure they're in there for the cross-sections like you had indicated. That was all I had.
All right, so what kind of a motion are we gonna make?
No,
right
no.
now?
No, we got.
So, we gotta-
Does anyone else from the board have any questions before I open it up?
No.
Okay. Seeing that this is a public meeting, I will open it up to the public. What I'm going to ask you to do is please identify your name and address, and direct your questions to the board, in which we will try to answer them to the best of our abilities. Okay? Don't everyone jump at once.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, you? Tony Ferrara, 7 Carvin Road. I just had I guess, so my understanding is that you guys are in agreement that the lots are not big enough all the lots are not big enough for duplexes. So that they would have to file for special permits, the lots.
Just hand him the
Yeah,
mic.
we're, basically, Tony, to answer your question, yes. The way this is laid out,
Use that like that.
if they're going to add 15 square feet to lot, is it 1 or 2?
1.
1, that could be compliant for a duplex. There already is a lot 2, which is 18,000 square feet. If you could just point them so we understand.
Lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, lot 4, lot 5, Lot 5 is an existing house, we're not changing it. Lot 4, we are relocating the house, it is already a two-family dwelling. This one is very close to 16,000 square feet, this is more than 16,000 square feet. So we are talking about this house.
Okay, but none of them have enough frontage or setback, even though I think the only one that meets all the requirements is Lot 2.
No.
Just looking at this quickly,
Yeah.
I'm gonna think that Lot 1 would have the setback and the frontage, and I'm gonna tell you, I think Lot 2, based on the way the cul-de-sac is laid out, it looks to me that
Has
that's
enough
going to
setback.
have the frontage requirements as well. Correct, Bob? George? Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
If you're looking at the frontages that were in the letter by the other neighbor, those were inaccurately quoted. That's not what the zoning bylaw requires.
Okay, so what does the zoning bylaw require for a duplex? Frontage and setback?
You got the chart there? There it is up on top. Right.
So minimum two-family lot area, 12,000 square feet, with minimum lot width, 100 feet, minimum frontage, 100 feet, minimum side yard, 25 feet, rear yard, 10 feet, and building coverage, 25%.
Frontage on the cul-de-sac is allowed to be reduced, correct?
Yep.
Yes, by 33%.
But he said square footage was 12,000 square feet, and we were talking about 16.
Well-
They have to go to the zoning board to get it approved. The minimum that they can, if they have 12,000, they can go to the zoning board and ask. The zoning board may grant it,
I
they
think-
may not.
I think-
Above 16,
As
they
a matter of
don't have to
right.
go to zoning board.
I think his
You have by
question,
right.
Larry, I think his question is, as a matter of right, without ZBA approval, what are the minimum requirements as a matter of right? That's what Tony's question is, which I believe he is accurate, that it's minimum of 16,000 square feet.
You also referenced frontage, though.
What's the frontage minimum requirement?
100 feet of frontage.
So it's
100 feet of
160.
frontage, 16,000 square feet
Okay.
is by right.
So, again,
On the cul-de-sac, you can, excuse me, but on the cul-de-sac, you can reduce it by 33%, so all you need is 67+ feet of frontage along the cul-de-sacs, which there are a couple of these that are on the cul-de-sac.
Okay.
So that's where some people are, maybe that's how that letter got drafted, I don't know, but the letter from the other abutter, there's inaccuracies
I
in
think
there.
I think the understanding, Mike, and I think part of the confusion is most of the duplexes that were being built were not part of a brand-new subdivision.
Yep.
So I think to your point, they're not taking into consideration the whole cul-de-sac, which this one would qualify for. That's part of the confusion. Because most of the duplexes were already on an existing road with perhaps 80 foot of frontage or 60, whatever it may have been. I think that's part of the confusion here.
Well, that, and I think they got in the wrong column on the chart, and we're looking at RC and our,
I don't know.
yeah, dimensions.
But that,
Yeah,
So
it
those-
comes down to they're asking for a lot, the only thing that they would need is a lot area from ZBA.
Special
I'm
permit.
concerned with the
Special
build
permit.
is
Yeah.
so whether or not, we already feel like the area is congested as it is. If allowed to build, then the other problem is gonna lie with, so that lot 2, how far away is that build from the brook? Like, the property,
Lot 2, this lot here?
yeah. Where's the Godfrey Brook on that?
Shown in blue. So,
This is the brook right here. You
I see it.
see the brook down there? You see it? Right there.
50 feet or so from the brook.
45, 50 feet.
And are they allowed to build that close to the brook?
Yes.
could have sworn I had to file for a special permit to put in a pool, because I had to be 100 feet away from the brook.
You were within 100 feet, you were within a regulated area, that's why you needed approval. You weren't prohibited from doing it, it wasn't a zoning setback, it was a conservation jurisdictional issue.
And you're correct, we are going to go in front of
Yes, they still have to
Conservation
go.
Commission.
We only handle, and again, this is where it gets slightly confusing. All we do is regulate the subdivision controls that are allowed in the town of Milford. Now, part of a subdivision, you also usually have to get involved with the conservation.
Yep.
Areas of conservation, wetlands, protection, so on and so forth, does not fall under our purview, so we don't address those concerns. To his point, George's point, you had a filing, or you?
I have not filed yet, but
So
I will.
They will be filing with the conservation again. Those are activities that they will address, because that's not under our purview. And then this one uniquely is, the applicant is, to make this palatable for himself, okay?
I
Is
understand.
going to the ZBA, which again, has nothing to do with us. That's, regrettable, but I know it seems like a lot of running around, but
And then
regrettably,
I guess just, and maybe what I need to do is reach out to the Claros, and I don't understand, if they're gonna try and build this development, right?
Yep.
They can, maybe should call Pinto, who built the duplex right behind me, and I told him that he wasn't gonna get anywhere with it. He's been sitting on it for 7 years now. So if you're gonna spend the money thinking that you're gonna sell the property, I don't really think it's gonna move on.
and again,
That's got nothing to do with us.
we're not really.
I know that has
taking
nothing to
either,
do with
Tony,
you,
but yeah.
I'm just letting them know.
No,
because
hey,
it doesn't-
you know what? I hear you.
And also just to, as you already mentioned, you are interested in the distance from the brook. It will be a public hearing with the Conservation Commission, and you're free to come to it. Also, as to the duplex,
You'll have a couple
With
bites at
respect
the
to
apple. You're gonna have
one, it will be a
conservation, you're gonna have
ZBA
ZBA. You'll have a couple bites at the apple, just,
and we will inform you of all of them.
What they're just.
must inform
yeah,
you by
what
law.
they're showing in terms of conservation, they're not doing any work in the actual protected zone, they're doing work in the buffer zone of the protected zone. There's no, just like, I'm sure you were allowed to put your swimming pool in within 100 feet, they're allowed to build a house within 100 feet, but they have to file because they're doing work within the buffer zone of the Conservation Commission. So there's that need for a file, but they're not asking for anything special from the Conservation Commission, should I say.
If they build where they're gonna build, right, and they change I mean, is there anything that's gonna affect the 100-year flood zone on that plan?
No, they can't, they can't do work in the 100-foot flood zone without providing compensatory areas. So if they wanted to, which would be a pain, but I don't think they're trying to do that, but if somebody were to try to fill in a 100-foot flood zone, and the Conservation Commission allowed them to do that, what they would have to do is provide
somewhere else.
a compensation area within that area. But they're not,
Which we're not
they're
proposing.
not proposing any
they
fill
don't have
in
the
the
room to
100-foot,
do that.
in the 100-foot flood zone, so that isn't what they're trying to do. So whenever they get to the 100-foot zone, they're not doing any grading in the 100-foot flood zone.
And the 100-year flood is shown on the flood insurance rate maps as an area on a map. But that's not really what it is. It's an elevation.
Yeah.
And those maps publish that elevation. That's the value of the map, not the picture on the map. So what they're showing there on the various plans is the elevation of the 100-year flood.
Yeah,
And
but
that's
just-
where it actually is not, and so it's not gonna look exactly like the FEMA map, because the FEMA map is a cartoon to warn people that it could flood, and it also publishes, in this particular area, it publishes what that 100-year elevation has been proven to be. And in addition, you've got the flood culvert there, to mitigate flooding in the first place. So not only do you have the Godfrey Brook itself, but you've got the diversion culvert,
Trying to take away the excess water.
to-
But even since then, and this has nothing to do with this, but I know that because I live there, and since the construction that's happened in my backyard, I know that I retain more water in my property now, and that said pool, both things happened at the same time, and I never had as much water come in through my sub pump as I do now, right? So is that gonna cause even more of a stress on
That's groundwater,
you
that's
know?
not flood water. That's groundwater. There's a high enough water table there anyway. So that's what's causing the water in your basement that makes your sump pump run. That's not flooding, it's
Yeah, well, the
groundwater
water
elevation.
level, the water that used to be trapped in
That's not
other.
flooding. Flooding is surface water.
The lawn is more damp, and regardless, I think that the project it's too big of a scope, too many properties on such a small piece of, I know that it looks like it's, or if, in theory, it looks like it's big enough, but it's not. Because half of that property dimension is the brook. That's all.
Thank you.
My name is Carol. I'm not that short.
No.
There we
There
go.
seems to be some technical
Yeah, you just
difficulties.
have to hold, just have to.
My name is Carol Matchak. I live at 9 Fruit Street. I have a couple of
Last name, please.
Matt, S like Sam, Check.
Thank you.
So we're going to be a direct abutter, and I just kind of want to go on something that one of my Carvin Road neighbors said. It looks like there's enough room. If you look at the way the lots are on Fruit Street, they're going to be building, wedging this in, behind houses, in between houses, between Fruit Street and Carvin Road. One of the properties, I think it's one of the bigger ones, there's actually 2 houses in front of it that have smaller properties. If you actually come down there and you look at the property, what they're going to be doing and the construction and the equipment, you're really going to be putting the neighbors out. I mean, you're going to be right on top of us. It looks like my garage is right next to my neighbor's garage. It looks like you're tearing that down, and there's going to be a concrete slab right there. You're going to be inches from my driveway.
You're talking about this area here?
Yeah, I live at the one right there. I would propose, I don't know if it's possible or not, since one of the things I was going to suggest, and I'm glad that the chairman brought it up, is that there isn't enough square footage to have that many duplexes. Let's scale this back and don't approve it until they bring you single-family houses. This is not an area that should have this many duplexes. I'm a town meeting member and have been forever. We designed that 16,000 square foot for a reason, to stop the overcrowding in the old part of Milford. And just because there's a little bit of open land doesn't mean that we should be putting multiple units that have multiple units in them. The other thing that concerns me is the end of the cul-de-sac is right across from Leonard Street. Fruit Street is not a straight road. It actually curves, and you do show it on here. People fly down that street. Unless there's going to be stop signs, there's going to be accidents there, just like there are at the blinking light in between Fruit Street and Fruit Street Extension. The fact that it looks like it's just going to be a straight shot, I don't think is a good safety issue. And the other thing that concerns me, I know you said that the pipes and I think electrical are going to be on top of the culvert. And I guess it's going to be written into the deeds that you buy this piece of property someday, if the town has to dig it up, you have to pay. Well, that's all well and good. You get somebody who's buying their first house and they're excited. Oh, sure, they're never going to do that. Well, now there's a problem with the culvert. The town's still going to be the one to dig it up. And if the homeowners can't pay, unless you're going to attach their house, the town's still going to be responsible for putting it all back together again. And I lived in the house for the 18 months it took to build that culvert. It is a giant culvert. It was a huge project. And just to put buildings and things on top of it, it destroys the conservation and the reason that it was done in the first place. And the town spent millions and millions of dollars on that culvert to protect that entire part of town, not just my neighborhood. So I'd like you to consider not approving what they're showing here. Make them go back to the drawing board. Work with the neighborhood, and let's keep our neighborhood a neighborhood and not just shoeboxing properties because you can. And even though you can't, because they're not big enough. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Just in addressing some of those so that we can get past, we asked the town about the culvert, we asked town council, because the town took that as an easement with certain rights. And we went back and checked, and there's nothing that this developer is doing that goes against what the town bought in rights to do that work. So we were cognizant of that from when it first came in as a preliminary plan, and we're worried about that. Town council said there is nothing that they're doing or showing that goes against anything that was in that easement that was taken. And they also indicated that we asked about putting certain things in, and I believe town council came back to us and said the town would replace it as to whatever is out there at the time. If something happened, the town had to go into. So it wouldn't actually be the people that were there. The issue becomes, if the town's gonna replace it, was the time frame, so that they were aware they could lose access to their driveway while it's being repaired, but the town would do all of the work, based on the way the easement was written and how the town took that property. So that's something that we, again, have to deal with and have to play with within the rights that we took as a town when we did that. So again, we're cognizant of that fact. Certainly will require that in the deeds, that anybody that buys, if this gets accepted, it has to be aware that you have a culvert in front of you and the town needs to gain access. They're gonna shut you off from your driveway if they have to, and you're aware of it. But that's about all we can do in terms of that.
Well, it also goes beyond to the scope of what, they're gonna be prohibited from putting fencing up.
Yeah.
and
Right.
Shrubbery and things of that nature, because that would influence the town's.
Why would you buy a property you can't do anything?
Strangely enough, I can't answer questions like that. I'm sorry, but, again,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, so, listening to what Carol had to say, I agree that, I think that they should be a good neighbor and talk with the neighbors and be that type of people that would help them understand what they're doing. This project is going to impede on their homes and their living day to day. I mean, they're right in front or behind certain homes, and it's not gonna be easy for them to hear the tractors going and the construction going. And I really believe that they should have some kind of a voice with the neighbors to make sure that if this does go through, that it's working neighbor for neighbor and construction people. I think that's a really important issue. It's a tight neighborhood. I know the neighborhood. I live on the other side. I know how busy that street is. It's a bypass road, and so.
it's densely populated, absolutely.
It really, really is. I mean, they're 10 feet, each home is being the old section, there's 10 feet between one house to another house.
So that was back in the day. Remember the old days, you knew all your neighbors?
Yeah, right. So I really believe that if you're going to finish with this, if this is gonna happen, I think you should reach out to the neighborhood. That's how I feel,
Thank you, Lena.
yeah.
I thought it's on
No,
a
no,
side note.
you just have to, we have to be aware that people at home, just so they have the opportunity to hear what you have to say. No, just pick up the microphone if you don't mind, please. I think Bob broke it intentionally.
Thanks, Bob. So, on a side note, if this project goes through and you do end up, I think one of the things that bothers me or why I'm here is also because of the property that was built behind me. They can't seem to keep a good tenant in there, and the people that have been in there just kind of, they're destroying the property. So you're gonna spend money, build these homes, and then not end up selling them, and then turn
Renting
around
them.
just to, and you're gonna rent them and end up spending money hand over fist, because the people that are gonna move into them are not gonna be, they're small lots, they're right on top of one another, right? So a family is not, they're not gonna want, if they do move in, they're not gonna stay very long. They're gonna wanna move to a bigger, more family-orientated development, you know, or property. So, just another food for thought.
Thank you. Sir, anything?
I pretty much took care of it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I gave you equal opportunity to, so obviously we're gonna continue this.
Yes, I see
kidding, yeah.
that this is where it's going. I see that there's
Here's
a
my
big,
question to you.
yep,
How much time do you need, realistically?
to address the issues that,
For the next meeting.
Yeah, in other words, before, don't tell me 2 weeks, because that's not realistic. I'm being honest, and I'm gonna, we're not gonna come back in 2 weeks and hear
Well,
it
no,
happen.
he's got testing that doesn't happen until next week to
That's what I'm
begin with,
saying,
so it's gotta be at least a
Realistically,
month away.
you're at least a month, but the question is, do you need greater than a month to come back, or
no,
you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay.
I sped up,
No, I
you
know,
know,
understand
sending
something.
people on
This
site
has
to
nothing to do
do
with
the
anything other than
field
the
stuff.
fact that, to Bob's point, there's one that's been, for one reason or another, been continued week on and week on for months, and it's
They
just
have to
not
go to the
fair.
conservation also, right?
No, well,
Yeah, but that doesn't,
But that doesn't really, that's not gonna impede much based on what they're looking to do.
Okay.
February 20th?
So let's go to the February 20th?
I could do it for the 6th, but
No, the 20th.
You don't want to do that. You don't want
I'd
to
rather you
do
be
that.
prepared and 100% prepared, because again,
well, no, you may be done, but our engineer needs to review it, and it doesn't
Yeah,
give him enough
no.
time if you're doing the testing next week.
I
and let's
agree.
be honest, you have some concerned neighbors, and I'm not gonna drag them out every 2 weeks to get another continuance. That's not being fair.
And also, I see that there's a lot of community reaction. I'm the engineer, I'm not the owner of the site. If you send letters to me though, I would facilitate, I will pass
Certainly, you
them
guys
to my
can
client.
perhaps have a discussion outside in the hallway,
So,
since we're gonna continue this to, what'd you say, the 20th?
20th.
20th.
All right, so, from the applicant, I have a request for a continuance to the 20th. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna continue this to February 20th. I only point this out because you will not be getting notified in the mail again about the continuance.
Right.
So, February 20th, I'm assuming the time will be 7:01, 7:05, not really 100% certain, but early on the docket, so to speak. So, you got it. So, I have a motion from Lena to accept the continuance, seconded by Johnny. Any further discussion? Hearing not, all in favor, opposed? Thank you. See you on the 20th.
You did good, Pat.
And if anyone would like a copy, you're more than welcome to this. Need glasses to see it, but. Or maybe your eyes are better than mine. Okay, moving right along.
You want to get the door?
Guys, want to take it outside?
We have the site eligibility review for the residents of Stone Ridge 40B development, Deer Street. What did I do with my paperwork?
It was in a pile.
It's the memo.
It's in there, Pat.
Oh,
It's-
thank you.
It's the memo to Rick.
Go ahead, Larry. 3 words or less.
It's another 40B on Deer Street.
Thank you, Larry. No, just-
But that's true. It's,
It is,
it's
and-
in-
and
it's in the
it's- and-
Stone Ridge Business Park.
And I think you've addressed it well. I mean, this was, for those who don't understand at home, this is the one up off 85 that the Restaurant Depot is being developed. And the applicant had come in front of this board over the course of several years, persuaded town meeting, persuaded us to put an article for town meeting, to change the zoning, which we did, which would accommodate the Restaurant Depot.
Right.
And regrettably now, I shouldn't say regrettably, with a heavy heart, let's just say,
Right.
they've now opted to put in a
40B.
40B, which, again, I don't think that was any of our, I don't think that was gonna be part of any of our notions at the time that they asked us to rezone it.
No.
With that said, Larry,
Well,
you wanna
lo-
fill in the blanks?
yeah, location-wise, well, back up a bit. The initial stage of this whole 40B process is for the applicant to seek project eligibility or site approval, so to speak, from Mass Housing. So they've applied for that, and at this stage, what we're commenting on basically to the selectmen through the town administrator is that question of site eligibility. So in that context, when you look at this development or this area, compared to some of the other 40Bs that have come through, we've already approved this area as a development site. The question as to whether a 40B is appropriate or not is more in the context of a change of use for a development that's already been approved. So it's not like they're starting from scratch. The packet that I presented tonight shows part of their site approval form that gives you the number of units. They're looking at a total of 272 units. Obviously, 68 of them need to be affordable. The first sheet on the chart shows the bedroom count and breakdown. The second sheet gets into their 5-story buildings. There are 3 buildings, and they're providing not quite 2 parking spaces per unit. This is 1.81. When you look at the last few pages where you see the site plans, the first site plan is the business park plan, and where office building number 4 shows up, which is actually the first building as you're coming in on Deer Street, that's where Office Depot went. And office building number 3 and number 1 are basically being replaced with what you see on the next sheet for the residences of Stone Ridge as the 40B, which will be 3 5-story buildings with a bunch of apartments. So that leaves a much smaller building pad in the business park development for what would have been 150,000 square foot office building number 1 on the first plan, which is now going to be reduced to a 9,000 square foot office building. But in terms of physical development, as I mentioned earlier, this site had already been approved as a development site. The problem or the concern now is that it's not going to be for research and development use. A sizable portion of it, 33% of the overall development, will now be a residential affordable housing development.
Well, I guess I have a question in terms of what was originally approved, and the ENF and the EIR that we went through, I don't believe fits, and I don't believe they have any development possible downstream if they want to pull this and do this, because as far as I'm concerned, that thing that was approved and all those agreements are out the door. I mean, none of that work is correct anymore in terms of traffic, and everything else that went into that thing is now totally incorrect. So they don't have any development parcels down here whatsoever with this, if Mass Housing says this is a housing development, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that was one of the things I pointed out, that those things aren't going to go away. Bless you.
Bless you.
So, one of your points would include the traffic calculations. So that based on trip generation, there was a whole improvement schedule that would trigger when certain off-site traffic improvements were required. So that's clearly going to change that.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily mean from, say, Mass DOT's standpoint that they're going to go away, but they're definitely going to get pushed out schedule-wise, most likely, because the trip generation for this development is going to be different than what it was, at least for the next phase of the original business park.
Well, it may not even work,
and-
depending on
and-
where they are, because from housing, the in and out is gonna be,
It may not even trigger some of the improvements that were
it
required
may
by
not be
Mass
that, or it may
DOT.
cause other issues, just because you've got a mass exodus in the morning all at the same
Exactly.
time, whereas
You've got-
now, over a business park, it's dispersed.
So while all of this can be happening with Mass Housing, it's clearly going to come back to bite them, because they're gonna have to go back and get all those other things
Well, yeah,
approved
and what
and
worries me
modified.
about that is that we did this in terms of a business development, and mass housing may look at that and say, well, you lost the building.
Right.
No, we may have lost more than that by the time we're all said and done with this,
Right.
and that would have a significant effect on the town in terms of their
It's not only what you
taxing.
lost, though, it's what you
Well,
gained, though,
but-
because the trip generation alone was not supportive of that many trips on peak hours. So that's the other problem. And then the directional flow is a heck of a lot different coming off 495 than it is leaving and going out, all different directions, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not convinced that mass housing looks at it in that sense,
Yeah,
at least
they-
not now.
Yeah, they're
Maybe
looking
later
at
we can get
getting more
something,
housing
yeah.
units, but I can pretty much guarantee you that they don't care that it's gonna raise the educational subsidy over $8,000 a kid.
No, they don't
Uh, They don't, and they basically don't care that we're losing all those future jobs.
Right.
That's never fazed them in the past.
No, I know that's certainly
So,
gonna be an issue.
but that doesn't mean that they are still not gonna need to go back and get all those other
Yeah, I mean,
approvals
once it gets
adjusted.
approved, if they
Yeah.
go through, all of this stuff is gonna have, as far as I'm concerned, is
Has
gonna
to
have to
be
be
addressed.
readdressed.
Yeah.
Including the fact as to how this business park now fits in with this, because everything that they sent us before
Is
is
incorrect.
useless, yeah. But I don't know that we can say any more than what you said in your letter to the selectmen in terms of where we are now.
Yeah, and as we go through the process, maybe more information will come to light. But at this stage, it's not a site plan review anyway. It's
Yeah.
not a detailed review. But to that point, we've kind of already done that on the business park. It's just now it's a change of use, and it has, a whole bunch of domino
I mean,
effects, all the way, a ripple effect through all the other approvals.
I guess it almost has some, to me, it has more safety issues too. I mean, if you look at this, I know we don't, in various times, we haven't considered this to be a cul-de-sac per se. But, when Restaurant Depot was here and we had effectively a long cul-de-sac to get here, I wasn't that interested. Now I got 275 residential units that have
Singular
a
access.
huge singular access. I don't know that, to me, that's an issue. That access to me is problematic based on it being residential as opposed to how much I was worried about it in terms of it being business, shall I say.
Well, I can certainly add more to what I had initially drafted.
I mean.
And that's all this was intended as.
Yeah, I know.
a draft
It is a long
discussion,
run.
so.
I mean, I've looked at it for all of
for
15
for
minutes, but
residential use.
that's what comes up to me, is the residential use, we've tried to get away from those types of long accesses, especially for residential usage.
Yeah,
I would think it's at least worth throwing in there.
all right.
All right. Moving right along.
Chalk it off.
I have a, what's it, how do you pronounce it, Sanyea?
Sanila,
Sanila? From the applicant through his attorney. It's been requested that you take them off the agenda tonight as his clients, his engineer and contractor are putting some further research into the resolution of the issue, and the issue that the applicant was coming in front of us had to do with the retaining walls, which the plan clearly showed should have been concrete walls, and the applicant inadvertently
These boulders.
erected a stone wall, multiple stone walls, forgive me. But to that, he is inquiring into whether the board would consider releasing Lot 33 from the covenant and replacing it with another lot in the subdivision so that the town could still hold 4 lots on the bond. If you recall correctly, was it 30 through 34? Was that the lots that we had held?
the last,
Believe?
yeah, the last 4, I think.
I think this, I'm not 100%,
I believe so.
I think it was 30 through 34.
It's 35 and 36 are built on.
Okay, so what he's asking us is to release lot 33 and switch it out with another. I'm just gonna give you my 2-cent conviction. My feeling on this is no. And I'm gonna tell you why. We told you from the get-go, this is what we were going to do. We asked you to follow the plan, clearly you did not. We asked you to go back and replace the stone walls with concrete It appears now that you're going to put some additional thought and research into that according to your letter, which I'm not really sure what kind of research you need, other than the fact that you gotta remove the stones and pour concrete. With that said, I would prefer, and I'd be much more willing, had he at least attempted to go back and resolve and put was on what the approved plan reflected. Since he has not to date, I don't believe that his demonstration of following the plan has really been followed through. And therefore, I don't feel compelled to start switching lots, because I find that he's being less than genuine with the conditions that were laid out by the board. That's my 2 cents feelings. Thank you, Johnny. Anyone else feel compelled to?
I totally agree
swap-
with you,
Swap
Pat.
off lots?
No, I totally agree with you.
I don't have an issue with swapping them. I think we
I
still
think
have
if
the same
Babe were here, I don't
progression.
think he would be willing to do it.
I mean, we have protection, we have 4 lots, we have 4 lots either way, I don't know that if it helps him that he gets another lot sold because someone wants a specific lot, and that may help him move on the other thing, then I'm more than happy to do that, if that's
Well-
what helps him.
It's just that he shouldn't have sold lots that hadn't been released.
That's right.
I know, but we've done this before, we've changed lots with people along the way,
You know,
so.
yeah, but they asked first.
Yeah.
Well, I have no idea
they
whether
also follow the
he's
plan.
asking now, I
They
mean, if we
also
say
follow
no,
the
who
plan.
knows what he'll do?
Well, you gotta follow the plan.
Well,
Okay, let's take a vote on it. We'll make this, make this simple. The applicant is requesting a swap of lot 33 for another unnamed lot that he didn't speculate. So we'll just ask for this. I'll have a motion. Okay, so, so John has made a motion to deny the applicant's request for releasing lot 33. Do I have a second on the denial?
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Seconded by Lena. Any discussion on the denial for lot release 33? Hearing no discussion. All in favor of not releasing lot 33? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? 3 in favor, 1 opposed. Perfect. And finally, as many of you know, the selectmen have requested a joint meeting with various chairs and department heads and elected boards.
Could I
I
ask,
believe that Ricky, excuse me, let me just finish. I believe that Rick has sent us all an email highlighting what the requests of the selectmen are. I had an opportunity to discuss with Larry, and he and I put together a list of 6 items. Obviously, we want to discuss them tonight.
okay,
We're only to present 3, and again, these are 6 items that Larry and I discussed. Obviously, there could be additional ones, and then we'll need to process and dwindle them down to 3. So with that said, Larry, if you could quickly just,
They
Yeah,
in the
just
packet?
as part of the background, I had included in the packet basically the agenda for the roundtable meeting. I had included the text of our annual report, so that the bullets in that remind us what it is, or remind the selectmen what it is the planning board does. I also included the implementation schedule from the comprehensive plan that shows the matrix with a check mark in the far left column of everything that had been recommended we do in the comprehensive plan, everything that's been completed. There are a number of things that either were outside of our direct purview or didn't get any support to get changed. So it's interesting to see what some of those things are. And then, because one of the things that Pat and I had listed as a priority was community access to information, so I had included the activity report for our online GIS for both 2016 and 2017. And in 2017, there were over 10,000, almost 11,000 visits to the GIS site. with 72,000 different actions that people used when they were on the site to get information about either their property or something else of interest.
Larry, just for those at home, can you identify what the GIS site is?
Well, the GIS is Geographic Information System. You can access it on the town's homepage, and it is a mapping site that shows all of the aerial photos, it shows all of the assessor's parcels, and it allows you to
Very,
act.
very helpful and an intuitive tool.
Right,
I just want those people at home, just,
yeah.
thank you.
Oh, I see what he did.
So then, it's what? Information system. You don't know that? Karen. And then the last sheet in the packet
Karen's retired now,
is
she
the, my customer service plan, but that's basically what we do on behalf, both Mike and I do on behalf of the planning board on a day-to-day basis, and how you try to advise the general public about different cases and help them through the process if they have a proposal. So with all of that as quick background, the 6 priorities that Pat and I jotted down that he referred to a minute ago, and again, these aren't necessarily in
There's no order to it.
order. The first one was to update the comprehensive plan, which would be $150,000, $200,000 warrant article, so we could hire a consultant again. The second one we mentioned was to try and do the residential zoning in the CA zone downtown, so you could have apartments upstairs above the businesses. The third one was the Depot Street extension of the alternate route, which is kind of phase 1 of the alternate route that would push Depot Street up through where those storage buildings are on the old rail alignment to get up to Main Street at the church. The fourth one we mentioned was open space protection. We've got a number of open space parcels in town, several hundred acres of open space that are actually under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, but don't
They're not protected.
don't have conservation restrictions on them like the Walden Woods open space. The fifth thing was affordable housing zoning, to do whether it's a 10% rule like, who is it, who does that, Lexington? Somebody has a 10% rule, to require open space, require affordable housing be built, or to take some other tact to be more actively involved in getting affordable housing created, so we don't end up with all these 40Bs in the wrong place. And the last thing was, again, to
GIS.
get a full-blown GIS beyond just what we're having on our web-based system right now. So those are the 6 that we came up with.
Obviously,
There's others that, but they want 3, so.
If Lexington does that, I'm pretty sure the requirement is that you build a 10% of affordable housing somewhere else in some other town.
No.
Is that, is that,
That's
is that
Western.
Wellesley?
That's
All
Weston.
right,
That's
anyway.
Weston.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyhow, I don't know the thoughts of the board. If there's other things that we'd want to discuss. Like I said, they're only looking for 3, so.
Well, especially,
but,
only giving us 5 minutes each, you're giving you 5 minutes for each
well,
board.
Ricky
That's
said
not
like
gonna,
3, but.
yeah, that's not gonna
Yeah.
work.
I mean, the one thing that I think is different with this board than some of the others is we have statutory requirements. And I think that needs to be brought up in terms of us and how we function and others function. Someone brings in a plan, we have to do certain things at certain times.
right.
Most of the others don't have to do that.
That's why
So
I
we're-
included
yeah,
our
We're under a different.
report text,
Yeah,
yep.
we're under a little bit different requirement than others. I think that needs to be made clear. Any of those that you listed, I mean, I think
Well,
the
hopefully,
GIS would be nice. For me, that would be one of the priorities that I think, should be brought up in terms of, all boards in the town, because I think it's gonna rely on way more than us in order to be able to get that going forward. I mean, some of the others we can do on our own, whether we get support or not, that's a different story, but they're certainly within our purview alone.
Yeah, I think the assessor's office would be clearly interested in the GIS.
Yeah, I'm not, I guess, you know, at some point, we need to think of a comprehensive plan. I don't know that that would be in my wheelhouse this year, per se.
Again, like I said, we threw
No, I
six
know, and,
things
and
out.
I'm just throwing it out, saying if that's one of the three, I'm not sure that that would be one of my high ones. I mean, I think we maybe need to start thinking about it, but I don't know that I would say it's a priority right now. It's certainly something to start thinking
I
about.
think
if
the
the
top priority,
selectmen-
the truth be told, should be the GIS. I think
Yeah,
that's the top
that's-
priority.
I think it
don't
would
mind-
help
I don't mind
everybody,
saying
yeah.
that.
You know,
I
I
think
have
that
no
should be
problem
priority
with that.
number one.
But to the extent that the selectmen think that updating a few charts and graphs here and there is updating the plan,
Yeah, well, I'm going past that in terms
Yeah.
of what they wanted or didn't want. I mean, in terms of a true
They asked for our
comprehensive
priorities, not
plan-
their priorities.
Yeah,
So,
and that's why, and based on what we've seen in terms of the usage of the comprehensive plan and the ability to make those types of changes, I'm not really thinking that's a big priority, because we've had a tough time being able to assimilate that into other boards and having them use it. So I'm not convinced that I'd go running out to do it again. That's
yeah.
where I'm coming from
Well,
with
and
that.
it's
But the
not like
GIS,
it's-
I think, I mean, I use it, I get on it quite a bit. I've gone to other towns and they're way better than ours. I mean, the
Yeah.
amount of information that they can put in, the layers that they have, it's a
Yeah.
great tool. I think it's something the town should have.
Yeah.
And as that technology gets better, it should become even easier for people to use,
Well, and you
for
think
a
the
lot of
highway
reasons.
department would benefit from it too.
every
So I-
department
I-
would benefit from it.
I think that's one that certainly is an all-board meeting, would be one for us to, if no one else brings it up, because I think others could, then we should
I don't
definitely get on
think
the
they think the
bandwagon.
way we think.
But they do.
So, okay,
I think
GIS would
that's
be
a-
one.
I think he's absolutely right with that.
So what are the others? We had affordable housing, open space, residential downtown.
I'd like to see what people are again with residential downtown.
I love that, but, you know, the kick in the pants is, at last town meeting,
I know.
they gave 20,000, and they're gonna come back and say, put houses, put apartments, and when they find out, what are they gonna say? Oh, no, we don't want them? I don't get it.
Yeah,
You
no.
spend 20 grand, we've been telling you that for years.
I know,
And we've gone to town meeting multiple times trying to get it approved, and for what?
I know.
Well, but they're asking what our
I know,
priorities
I
are, not
think
that they would agree with
If you
them.
truly wanna revitalize downtown, if you truly
Yeah.
wanna change the complexity and the offerings, the only way it's gonna be successful, it has to have some introduction of residential homes. It has to.
Well, so that sounds like number
It's
two
pretty
now.
pathetic if you can go downtown Leominster and that downtown looks better than ours. And more vibrant. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know how that ever happened.
Just to make a point, Pat, just at the Cape where I am in the summertime,
Well, lolly dolly.
right, at the Commons, they have all apartments. It's beautiful there, and they're full of apartments now, along the
true mixed
whole
use, Lynn.
area.
It's
The
true
mixed
mixed
use
use.
there is
And it's
unbelievable.
lively.
It is.
Well, the thought process has certainly changed. I mean, the thought process in the sixties and the seventies was you separated those. The thought process now is that those need to be combined in order to make them useful throughout.
What was the name of the flea market that was there? Now it's
Oh, I
Roach
used
Brothers.
to
What was
love
it?
that
I used
flea
to love
market.
that place. What was the name of it?
What, on the Cape?
Right there at 151. Dick and Nellie's.
Dick and
Oh, they
Ellie's.
moved
Dick
down
and
further to the Cape.
Ellie's
They were down.
sold it, yeah.
Dennis, they're in Dennis.
Oh,
Well,
They
Can
got
you
so-
moved out.
imagine
Oh,
what they,
it's
yeah.
more fun. Anyhow.
So,
Yeah, they were on Airline Road in Dennis.
So we
So-
have,
Right.
we have
Further.
two. We have GIS.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Residential
residential
downtown.
downtown. So the other ones that you and I'd written down were the new comp plan, the alternate route, the section over here, and open space protection and affordable housing.
Sid and I.
Affordable
I think
housing,
the problem with affordable housing is I think that, I don't know if there's enough enough land subdividable to truly implement any type of standard. I love the idea, but I don't know.
well, depending upon what redevelopment is gonna start occurring, if you had a development requirement adopted, any new stuff would come under it. So, at least in theory.
In terms of a priority, because I like the idea, I wouldn't mind, again, it's our priority. I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind it as us being, trying to get, because I haven't even thought about it, so I wouldn't mind getting information on it. that would seem something that this board could do over the next year, certainly. I don't know that we go anywhere with it, but at least I'd like to become
It's
more
something to
informed about it,
exercise,
yeah.
So, but just so you guys are aware, I did post the meeting as a special meeting, so.
Not knowing who would attend and who wouldn't.
Hopefully, you guys can all show up. I don't know if Babe's gonna feel like coming, but the four
This
of
one?
you,
Thursdays, yeah.
Thursday, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I don't know,
guess
I don't think so.
Six is somewhat difficult for me.
Thursday at 6.
usually.
Well,
Like I
it's
said,
not gonna be over
We
real
posted it
quick,
in
most
case-
likely.
In case at least three of
Okay.
us show up. If
Yeah,
you-
that's good.
No pressure, don't,
Yeah.
don't feel obligated.
That's a good
I'll
idea.
have to be there, but don't feel
Yeah.
obligated.
Yeah,
Thanks, Karen.
All right, well,
So those are the three.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, best practices, again, I think goes back to, you know, us being a statutory board with statutory requirements. So I mean, our best practices are to meet the requirements that the state law
tired.
requires us to do more than anything else.
Yeah, the only
But-
other thing I'm gonna throw in there is, you know, it's probably not, it's not exactly best practices, but I can't help myself.
go ahead.
To your point, we have statutory time requirements, and unfortunately, we don't have a true open line of communication that's consistent. That's consistent, when we look and rely upon the sewer board and so on and so forth. It would, like I said to Larry, in the digital age of emails and so on and so forth, I would really like to get better updates rather than,
Waiting.
do we have a letter from the sewer board? No, they haven't met, no.
Right.
Oh, yeah, they met, but we don't have a letter yet. I mean, this is the problem. It stalls this board. And all we do is just keep prolonging for things that, really and truly, if we were better informed,
Right.
we could either do provisionary approvals.
Right.
Subject to this, or, you know, have a better flow for you know, what's going on.
They could send an email to Larry,
That's my
post the
point.
letter,
Most of
and
them
then
do.
it could be
It's
passed.
not best practices, but I can't help myself, is
Right.
what my point.
Right,
But
Well,
it would
the-
immensely help this board, I believe.
Well, and I think.
It's not our practice that needs the improvement.
No, and I think, I mean, you know,
I can't help
unfortunately, to a
myself.
certain extent, we rely on the applicant to find out the status of letters. I mean,
I know.
those boards, they have a responsibility to report back to us. And it shouldn't be the applicant running around trying to see if there's letters or not.
It
There
just-
should be a better way of
It should be
doing
more
that.
streamlined. I think there's a process for streamline.
Some applicants know they need to go.
Well, I understand that, but at the end of the day, I'd rather it not be them doing it.
It seems to be more professional.
Yes.
All right?
Yeah,
So-
okay, good.
Areas where mutual cooperation, that'd be interesting. Well, I think we just talked about that in terms of, you know, we'd really, because we're under a statutory requirement, we'd,
But it's just better streamlined operation, and it's better quick pro for all of us.
yeah.
That's all. All right,
I like those
perfect.
things.
Well, for those who are available, I'll see you Thursday. If not, I
I'm
understand.
gonna try to make it.
I'll make a motion, take a motion from Lena, seconded by John to adjourn. Thank you and have a wonderful night. Stay safe in the snow tomorrow, people.
Oh, God.